Welcome to the Women Tech Council Student Innovator Mentorship Podcast Series. I'm Sarah Jones.
And I'm Sydney Tetro, and we are co-hosts of this show.
This show provides conversations with women mentors who came through STEM pathways and launched successful STEM careers.
Welcome to our mentorship podcast series. I'm here with Chiao-ih Hui, one of our great women in the industry with a STEM degree. And we're just going to talk a little bit about what that means. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I have a STEM degree. I'm a wife. I'm a mom. I'm an engineer for a tech company in the Bay Area. I have lots of hobbies, including actress, and we're kind of looking into real estate development as a side project. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's who I am at the moment.
That's right. Well, you've had a lot of really interesting kind of pathways on the career side, and we might have even learned a little bit about you already. But we're interested in, like, as you think about your career, what's one of your most memorable highlights? What is something you look back and you're like, because I had a STEM degree, I got to do that, and it was really cool.
You know, without a STEM degree, my life would have been totally different. And in fact, I started college wanting to do architecture. I went through one quarter. That was when the University of Utah was still in the quarter system. And I did one quarter and realized it was kind of boring. And then I ran into a graduate student who was doing architecture. And I told him, I'm thinking of changing my major. Why should I stay in architecture? And he had this interesting pitch. He said, as an architect, you work horrible hours, especially when you first get out of school. You have to work under somebody else. You're not appreciated. No one knows that your name is actually on that building because it's usually the firm's name that's on that building. But you get to go and stand in front of that building and say, I did this. And I looked at him and I went and changed my major the next day. I was like,
it was clearly inspiring for the architect.
Clearly for him. But for me, I was like, no, man, that is not very interesting. And I had enough AP classes where I was pretty much done with my generals. And at 18, I had to know exactly what I was doing for the rest of my life. And I was kind of freaking out. And my dad is an engineer. And it was kind of like complaining to him one night. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't want to just take classes. And he kind of nudged me. He was like, engineering. And to be honest, I got into it just to basically shut my dad up, right? To say I did it. It wasn't my deal, and I'm doing something else. And I took engineering. It was just like a basic computer programming class. And it was awesome. It was interesting. It was challenging. You get this sense of accomplishment when you're done with an assignment. And so in terms of like highlights of my career, I've had the opportunity to meet 4-star generals. I've had the opportunity to meet a president, the WAS, right? Like all sorts of interesting people who have done really interesting things. And funny enough, that's not like I should point to those things as highlights. But really the highlight is when, you're done with this huge and crazy project with a crazy deadline and a horrible timeline, and you're able to take a step back and take a moment with your team members and the colleagues that you respect and trust and, think a lot of, and you guys are able to take a step back and just feel that sense of accomplishment. We did it. Against all the odds, we were able to do it. We're able to make this delivery. And in most of the companies that are STEM related, the deliveries that you make will make a difference in somebody's life, right? It will make a positive difference. And so if I could bottle that feeling, I would consider that like the highlight. And if I could bottle that feeling, it would make some of the days that are slogs go a lot better.
Yeah, totally. That's a really good perspective that because of STEM, so many things are possible. Mm-hmm. And I really love the conversation in there too, that in STEM, you are a creator. and you get to create, and the impact that you can have can be immediate. It can also be fun, and it can be life-changing, which is a really, really cool way to think about that. I really like that as your highlight. Okay, well, bottle it up so you can take it on the tough days. So kind of related to that, think about through the course of your career, because you've done some cool things all the way from, being inventor at the CIA to the work that you do today. What are some of those challenges you've faced that you successfully overcame, and how did you really do that? Because we all face them in our STEM careers.
Yeah, especially. So the nice thing about a STEM career is that 1 + 1 will equal 2, right? It's not marketing where you're hoping you tap into something within somebody. And so the challenges that we face, especially in the workplace, they're fixable. You can figure it out. It's physics, right?
Right. It really is an equation.
It is an equation, and it's just a matter of hunkering down, putting your head down, and pushing through it. And I found time and time again, we've run into problems. Whatever has come up, and all of a sudden it's going to derail the entire project. And you close the door to the conference room, you sit down, you identify what the problem is, you get the right people in the room, and you think about it and you work through it. You come up with a couple of different solutions, a couple contingency plans.
A lot of contingency plans sometimes.
A lot of contingency plans sometimes. And you move forward. And that I think is magical, because nothing is too hard at that point. You just do it.
That's one of the coolest things about tech, right? Anything's possible. Like really, if you can imagine it, it can become a reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I think is one of the cool things. And I think that they'll all face challenges. We do, even every day. But it's a little bit of that perspective and that idea that you want to bottle those career highlights that also kind of plays into your mindset around there. So we have this question we've been asked many times, especially by our students, which is, how do you integrate work and life, right? When you're a student, your whole world is about studying and grades and then getting into career. And then sometimes the pendulum swings the entire way, right? That you start your career and then it's all career.
Yeah.
And then I think I found myself at a point at one time where we're like, I've got to create this better integration between the things that are important in my life or hobbies that I love and work. So what's your advice and how have you navigated that?
I think the first thing that is important is for you to consider who you're working for and what company policies are put in place so that you can have work-life balance. So a lot of companies now, they are doing away with vacation time. And not in the sense that you can't take any more vacation, except the difference now is we're not going to track your 2 weeks that you can have. You can take as much vacation as you want now, as long as you get your job done.
Yep.
And that in itself, I think, is so progressive. And that's, in a sense, that's allowed me to have the work-life balance that I do have. There are days I need to take off because my 4-year-old is sick, right? And I need to stay home with him. Or we can take off because, we've signed up for a race that we need to go do. And I don't have to count my hours and make sure I can take off to go do that race, right? And my employer knows I need to do those kinds of things so that I'm focused when I am at work. And I think a lot of companies are taking that approach.
Yep.
And not just with vacation time, but other policies as well, like maternity leave, paternity leave, and because once you have children, they kind of suck up a lot of time. And a lot of employers get that, and they allow you to have that balance. And, if you don't have children, there are still other things you can do to take advantage of the policies that your company does have. And so I think for students that are, looking for more balance, I think my takeaway for them is know that as soon as you get your degree, you will absolutely have more time for that balance. It'll just automatically be there. But also take a hard look at what your employer is offering, because sometimes people also don't take advantage of that, right?
That's right.
I have colleagues that never take vacation time because they feel guilty about it. It's like, well, we don't. As long as you get your stuff done, it's fine. Go take off. We've got other people that can cover for you while you're gone for your 2 weeks or 3 weeks, right?
And it's really important to the productivity of employers along the way. Yeah, and I think we're seeing a lot of trends. I mean, more and more of our companies are really going to hold you accountable to do the job. We're going to give you the flexibility. One of my favorite things about STEM degrees and companies is that there is inherently more flexibility because you can work in almost any place.
It's true.
Truly you have to go in the office and have some of those connections, but the ability to, even if I have to stay home with my child who's sick and still work or work after kids go to bed or whatever that is actually there.
Yeah.
Which I think STEM affords you that you don't have in other places.
That's very true. It's very true. Also, a lot of STEM companies, because they are, I'm going to say global, right? There's always somebody online you can ask questions to,
right?
Have a conversation with, and yeah, there's a lot of flexibility that I think we get to enjoy because we're in a STEM field that, some of my friends that chose other fields just don't have, because, like, to your point, they have to show up to something every day, and if you're physically bound to a spot, then
yeah, and your job physically requires that, and we really do get the flexibility to say, I'm going to work for a few hours from home, and then I'm going to go in, or I want to miss the commute, so I'm going to be here, or I have to go to my son's performance or the soccer game,
or I'd like to miss the snowstorm, right?
Or I'd like to miss the snowstorm.
I'm going home right now.
Yeah,
I'll be online in half an hour.
Yeah, it makes a big difference in your ability to manage your world along the way. So a couple of questions for you. As you think about your career, do you have a specific example of a challenge you had to overcome? Whether it be skill set or an environment that you were inside of, or something that you were just like, this was something that I had to figure out, and kind of what things did you have to tap into inside yourself to get through those?
That's a really good question. So nothing technically, but there were a few times when the work environment was really challenging. And to the point where in each of these instances, so funny enough, it happened in instances where I loved my job. And the environment was so challenging that I considered leaving the job that I loved. The thing that got me up in the mornings and got me excited to show up to work, right? And I think in one instance, I actually changed my job. It was another opportunity came up within the company, and I was asked to take this other opportunity. And had I not had the challenging environment, I would have declined it and stayed in the job that I love. But I moved, and looking back, I should have stuck it out.
Really? Why?
Because the person who was making it difficult, he was moved to another position like a month after I moved. And so I feel like, and really looking back, it was just really hard and challenging for maybe a couple months. Had I just stuck it out for a little bit longer, right, I would have been able to keep that job and possibly have grown within that job
because the next job you took, you didn't love, and you didn't stay at as long.
I didn't love. I was really good at it, but I didn't love it. And they specifically asked me to take that job because it was a really large program. They were concerned about, who might take it. And so they specifically tapped me to take it and asked me to take it. And had they say, no, we really do need you to take it, I would have said, okay, well, let me see this program through, but I want this job back when I'm done. And instead, I left the job that I loved. And to this day, it's one of the regrets that I have.
Interesting. Were there any indicators you had? So it's really hard to make that decision when you're in a challenging environment because you don't know the longevity of the position you're in. So as you look back on it, were there things that you could have said or done without knowing that in a month he was going to leave?
Yeah.
Like, what could you have picked up on? I mean, you just actually said something that triggered for me. If you loved that job, you went to this other one, should you have said, or could you have said, hey, when we're done with this, I want to come back here?
Mm-hmm. And had I known...
Right, that's the challenge, right?
Had I known. Looking back, what I probably should have done was I should have talked to management more.
Should have escalated the feelings that you were having.
Or at least had the conversation of, yeah, I'll go take this, but I want the option
right.
to come back. I want first right of refusal to come back. And then at that point, it would have been a different dynamic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely would have just jumped right back into the other job.
So maybe a couple good takeaways I take from that are, if you find yourself in a place that you love but a challenging environment, it's really hard to stay in those. So you usually end up getting yourself out. But if you're within the same company, I kind of often talk about like leave all the doors open, right? Like don't shut your own doors, because they will get shut for you on opportunities.
Absolutely.
And kind of this is an interesting way to think about that. How could you have kept that opportunity open knowing you were going to a special project so that if something changed, but it's hard to know, right?
It's hard to know, because he was the person that was making it difficult. I mean, he was put in a very high level position, and yeah, it would have been hard to know.
I mean, those are one of those things, but I think it just goes to the point of being aware of the environment and leaving those options that could be available open, so that if it makes sense, you could go back.
I think being aware, I mean, that really touches upon... I feel like had I been more aware, maybe I would have known he wasn't in it for the long haul, right?
That's
Management would have moved him later on.
Or you could have sensed some of those inner workings that were already they were clearly underway by that time.
Right. But I was just so focused on how crappy my life was at the time and how do I get out of this situation, that I may have missed some of those cues. And so yeah, and be aware. And, one of the best advice I've ever been given was kind of like what you said with make sure all the doors are always open. This advice was always take the opportunities. Yep. Because you never know when the next one's coming, and opportunities will beget more opportunities.
That's right.
Right. And so yeah, like, I think I was just so focused on the day-to-day, how awful this person was to work with, that I should have just popped my head up and saw the opportunity of everything. Because frankly, had I stayed in that job, and when he moved, maybe they would have just put me in his role.
That's right.
Right? So I may have closed the door on myself by getting out of that situation.
Right. But I think you make really two great points. Be aware. And one of the most strategic skills you can learn is reading an environment.
Yeah.
Because
and women are really good at that.
That's right. Naturally really good at that. Yeah. And figuring out probably the challenge that all of us is when you're in those situations that are not ideal. When you're like, I'm not sure I can do this one more day. To have the perspective of what's going on around me and what will change or has the potential to change that might make it this become a place I want to work in the short term, or what decision do I have to make now?
Or really, like, long term. I just didn't have the long term in front of me, right? Because I was so focused on
it's hard
the short term and how awful it was, and yeah. But that said, had I not moved away from that job, that other role, the special project, actually gave me other opportunities, right? And so it's always going to be a question.
That's right.
Will I
always making decisions?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Will life have been better had I just stuck it out?
It's hard to know. Grass is greener. So we're here. So we're going forward. So kind of one last question for you, which is, what advice do you give these students who are in the midst of their STEM careers with all of these questions and life choices in front of them?
Reach out. Right. And I say that in terms of, if something's hard in class, reach out and find yourself a study group. If you're comfortable with that study group, reach out even further, get involved, reach out to Women Tech Council, right? There's this whole huge network of people that want to see young people, especially in STEM, succeed.
That's right.
And I think a lot of students, when they're in the midst of it, right, things are hard and they don't see how many people are rallying for them. And
it's actually the same problem we just described in the job, right? You get so focused, you have to look up.
Look up and you'll see all these other people who just want to help you. You just need to reach out. And so that's my advice. Reach out and do it before you jump ship.
That's right. Okay, we're making that a new hashtag, reach out, as part of our campaign. Might show up on the reach out day for all of our students. Thank you so much for spending time and joining us on this mentorship podcast series.
This was so fun.
Thanks for listening to the Women Tech Council Student Innovators Mentorship podcast series. Go to www.womentechcouncil.org for more info and subscribe to our iTunes channel for access to our ongoing series.